Hi, everybody. Super happy to be speaking to you at the UXDX conference. Many thanks to the organizers for inviting me to come speak to you. Happy to share with you my journey of SumUp, how we are looking to scale design. It's been quite a journey, and especially in the last couple of months, the experience with COVID has really taught us a lot about the organization and how we need to be adapting, and it has affected and impacted, of course, how we are thinking about our scaling. I'll be talking about 3 pillars that we're embracing to participate and to make this journey work. One is around organization, one is around practice and culture, and the other one's around UX strategy. So I'll walk you through all of those. I joined SumUp in November last year, so it's been 10 months, and as I already mentioned, it has been a journey both because of the nature of the company and then of course because we had to make some significant adjustments with the lockdowns and the COVID crisis. It has actually revealed quite a bit about the company and the commitment that SumUp has to helping our small merchants be successful and be successful at this point in time. Was a very heartfelt and very genuine part of our motivation to significantly shift the company from card reader company to a multi-product company. When I join the companies, I always spend some time getting to know the organization, and I like to use this model from the Danish Design Center to take a little bit of an inventory of how does the company actually understand design, how does it work with design, and how much does it embrace it. There are a couple of other models that are also quite good. One is from the McKinsey Value Index that was published, I think, in 2018, and then last year the Envision maturity report was also published, and it's really quite good and worth a read. This one is simple. It has 4 steps, so I'd like to stay with that because it makes it understandable in how design can progress in an organization. And SumUp, like most companies, is somewhere between 2 and 3, thinking about design more as styling versus understanding that design is actually a process, and in the way of designing and in the way of working can be an organizational change driver. The other model that I always like to look at is, where's the organization? How is it evolving? What's its philosophy? In general, when I start, when companies are early in the design adoption, I like to start with a more centralized but embedded teams in order to really build the culture and build the practices. What is happening as we're now all living in some form of tribalization, we frequently have to go straight from scattered individuals and teams to actually having distributed teams that are living inside of tribes or whatever the particular language is in your organization. And we need to move towards finding a way in which to have what I call empowered transversal teams to really support the individuals in the various tribes and organizations. It is for that reason that I come back to what should be a super familiar model to us and almost common sense at this point, but it's always surprising to me how organizations are not really acting or embodying or working with them. But this belief that I call it the magic triad, where design and product and engineering really collaborate together in solving the problem that we are trying to solve for our customers, and in this case for our merchants. But I find in a lot of organizations, sometimes because of reporting, the design and product work well together, although frequently design is more supporting function to product, and then engineering is left out. I have been in some organizations where design is more closely tied to engineering and then is a bit more on the implementation and functional side. But in most organizations, this magic triad doesn't really work the way I think we're all envisioning it in this kind of super collaborative, super equal mindset. So I'll bring this up again later when I talk about how I'm setting up organization within SumUp, but I think it's a pretty important framework to remember that real innovation comes at that intersection. So with these 3 models, I then also always look at what is unique about an organization, because ultimately any model can work, but it can only work if it can fit within the philosophy and the structure of the company that you're trying to introduce this to. And SumUp has distinctly unique attributes and characteristics that require particular approaches. The way I like to talk about product and the merchant experience is to say we have one merchant and one product. And for quite a long time, this was really true. We had a card reader, and then we had an interface that, for example, with this product, the Air, you need to have the app so you could enter the amounts and then you could actually do the transactions. Straightforward interface, some additional management functions, but quite straightforward. In the last 4 or 5 months, we've become a multi-product company. So we have now invoicing, we have selling online, we have mobile payments, we have gift cards, we have all of these new products and functions and tools that can allow our merchants to be much more successful. But where do we put them? How do they integrate them? And we've started the conversation of saying that our app reflects our organization because we have one more button where everything now lives that we've launched. That can all be worked out, but what's particularly challenging about this is it means that this was actually in January, this is 11 teams working into one product interface. We're now actually 16 teams working into one product, one interface. And so the particular challenges in this with these autonomous teams, how do we get this product to evolve in a way that creates a cohesive merchant experience that really focuses on building value for the merchant, not launching products and features in our own autonomous ways. This is what keeps me awake at night. And this is really what I'm looking to address and evolve as we go on this journey in scaling design. So how to do this? I have 3 pillars or areas that I really focus on as part of this journey. So one is, what is really the design organization? And what are the practices in the community that really provides the glue? And where do we really want to go? What's our UX strategy? And what's the product vision that can really inspire people to really work towards this shared vision? So first, the design organization. I mentioned already that I have a particular philosophy of how I would love to start, but most of the time we're already further along. And at SumUp, like probably a lot of the organization that you're working for, we have to embrace the fact that the design organization needs to map the organizational philosophy of the company. I have worked in other companies where the design organization didn't quite match the rest of the organization. And yes, it made us special, but not always special in a way that was good for us. So design was frequently in those circumstances was blamed for any hindrance, any delays, anything. It was always somehow the design was the bottleneck or the team not delivering. So I'm very aware that even though I might think about wanting to have a different structure, it's super important for design to be equal from an organizational perspective. Since I started, we've grown from 35 designers to 68. We have brand designers, product designers, and user researchers, and we are quite distributed. We have offices in Copenhagen, in Sofia, in Berlin, and another office in Cologne, and a big, not insignificant office in Sao Paulo. So, when I think about, okay, we have this organization, how do we create cohesiveness, both in structure, but then also in our practices, so we can actually all be empowered to create one experience for our one merchant. The way we've matched to the organization is we are tribalizing our product teams. So we have, I think, 7 tribes now, and there's more coming on a regular basis. And then we have marketing teams that are currently embedded. We are very country focused, but here we're also talking about tribalization. So we really want to, the company very much believes in autonomous teams, really self-organizing, and really solving merchant problems in their particular domain and value stream. On the other side, then, I'm looking to build this empowered transversal organization. It was part of the platform tribe, where we're really building teams that can provide needed expertise and look across the journey and look across our products. So one is around brand design, one is around user research, a design system, and then service design are really senior design experts who can work on projects that cover different tribes and teams. And we're also beginning to set up design ops and then bringing in much needed expertise that may not exist in the organization. And I'll talk about that in a few more minutes. To then come back to how do we empower this triad, this magic peer relationship to happen. I'm working with all the tribe leads, which can come from a variety of different disciplines, to create a matching structure for design within the organization. So design will have a design lead reporting to the tribe lead as a peer to engineering leads and product leads, then have designers actually reporting into them. So we set up mini organizations in these tribes so that there is design support for the designers, there's mentorship, there is this cohesiveness, and there is already at the most senior level in the tribe and a setup where the teams and the disciplines are treated equally. This is really quite important. In a lot of organizations, design is reporting to product, and this keeps this slightly lopsided relationship moving. And here I'm really looking at reinforcing the equilibrium by setting up this parallel structure. Then we still have the designers embedded in actual teams and squads. This is super important because, again, this is on the ground. You get really this level of collaboration going. And so I talk about team designers with their own superhero skills, if you will, that really can work on a day-to-day basis with a squad or with a team on features, be in the practices and the rituals, and really be part of making things happen. I've watched over the last 5 years the rise of product designers, which I don't fully believe in. They're usually hired as one designer who needs to be great at UX, great at UI, great at user research, great at pixel iconography, and maybe even also copywriting. And while I may know a handful of people who are really great at all of them, most designers that I know really have a strength and a core where they really excel, and then they have complementary skills. So I really want to think there's an opportunity for us to really honor their strengths and really leverage that, and then have them focus on bringing additional expertise as needed to really help support where they may not be as strong. So team designers tend to be stronger on the UX and problem-solving side, but that's not, of course, a rule. But then if that's true, then at what point does a tribe, for example, or even at a global level, need a really super expert UI designer that can really work and complement the team designers? Or a copywriter, because not every designer is good at copywriting, or use a researcher who can really support maybe multiple teams or multiple tribes. So this model is one that really honors that, if we want to have design excellence, we really need people who have deep expertise in a particular area to complement maybe more generalists or designers who are UX designers who can really apply very good systems design, but who could benefit from a peer to really solve the design problem and take it to the next level by having a UI or a visual designer or a UI copy expert working with them. This is important on a couple of levels. I apply the same model inside of tribes as well as to the organization as a whole. It gives me a chance to scale design at a pace that the company can actually handle. So we're now looking to hire our first UX writer in all of SumUp. I'm hiring him or her into the global organization. With that, I'll begin to set up almost a demand for my other teams and other tribes to also want to have a UX writer because they see the value that this skill and this person can produce. And there'll be a natural push for then tribes to say, yes, we need to have one. We're going to prioritize them as a headcount. So rather than me needing to convince the people, I can bring somebody in, I can show what value they can produce. And then very quickly, the demand will grow in the other teams and we can expand and disseminate it as we need to, initially as shared resources and then maybe embed it in different teams. So coming back to organization, what are sort of 3 principles, if you will, that can really help with the thinking around organization? One is very important that the design organization needs to really adapt and work within the philosophy of the company. I really, if you aspire to have really great products, I really believe it's important to not compromise on quality of talent and cultural fit. And the idea of having experts supporting more generalists is a way in which you can really do both. And then really grow at the pace that the organization can handle. And that's where this model of experts supporting generalists is one that I found to be really quite effective in creating that kind of demand and creating a natural organizational pace. The second pillar is really around practices and community, because as we shift the organization towards these embedded tribes and these embedded teams, we need a way in which to have cohesiveness, across them. Remember the 16 teams that are all working into an interface? Well, those are all individual teams and individual tribes. And I need to find a way in which they're, at least at the design level, but really also at the product and engineering level, we know what we want to be doing. We have shared practices to get there. Design sprints have become a very loved practice. I believe design sprints aren't the answer to everything. I actually believe workshops are, really sitting down and working together on solving problems. So we are embracing the workshop as a format for us in general. Of course, when we can all be in the room together, it really creates that bond and that kind of sensitivity that we are looking for. One of the designers, I can't see him right now, he's from our Sofia office. We had quite a few of our Brazil product and engineering and design members in this particular sprint, and he really embraced understanding our merchants from Brazil. And now in conversations, he'll be talking about already, how we need to be thinking about it from a completely different perspective. And he didn't have that kind of awareness until we brought everybody together. So, this I really believe is important. Of course, now that we're all working from home, we have to take it virtual, which, yes, we're all getting to know Miro boards and they do quite a bit of magic. It is not the same thing as working in a room together and whiteboarding. But we need to embrace the technology and not forget the practice and the importance of collaborating and working together, which is super important to create that shared knowledge, especially when we're an organization that's so distributed. And we're really developing in Berlin and in Sofia for our merchants as far away as Brazil. One of the practices that I really focusing on that I find it actually quite interesting is a design crit as part of the way in which we can come together and review and input in each other's work. We're finding at SumUp that frequently 2 or 3 teams are working on very similar problems, or views into a portal. So we'd like to bring them together and then really start to have a conversation of, do we really need to do different list views, or can we have the same, and how do we agree to that? Coming from consulting, design critiques were common practice. I've found though in organizations that is much less common and frequently quite uncomfortable. So from my perspective, this is going to become an important part of our practice, but we need to figure out how to bring designers to the place where they can value it, they can work with it, they can separate themselves from their work and really engage in a dialogue so that we can strive towards a much better solutions and much better quality of output. One of the things that we're looking at to get there is to talk about what we even mean by design excellence. It is my goal that we create amazing products. And so we need to have a shared language, not only design, but also in with product and with engineering, on what do we actually mean by that. So we're right now in the middle of really going through this process. This was our first step of just even saying what is excellence. And it's of course not purely aesthetic. There's a lot about fit and usability and accessibility, but we really need to take it a step further because too many principles and too many characteristics and too many, it gets really confusing on what to work with. So we're currently looking at how do we take our brand values, our promises, our who we want to be, and then use design excellence as a part of our process tool, part of something we can use for developing language to do design critiques. And then how can we actually then measure the output, more on the design side than maybe on NPS or overall performance side. So we're still, this is very much a work in progress, but we believe that this can be one of the vehicles where we, as a design community, but then also eventually with the product and engineering organization, can have a language for providing feedback that's constructive, not opinion-based, and that we can then, over time, actually tie to different metrics. So here again are 3 principles for how to emphasize community as a vehicle to build this cohesiveness. One is really about the community values, agreeing in the principles, the artifacts. We haven't quite yet figured the artifacts out yet, but that's part of what we want to do this quarter. We don't want to talk about processes, but what are these fundamentals that we need to cover as we work on different projects across the globe. I definitely believe we need to co-create so we can have a shared language. We have a shared vision of what problems we're solving for our customers. And as a company, SumUp is very much in the conversation of how important it is for us to work together and be face-to-face. I know there's a big trend everywhere to work remote, and that will stay. But we're real big believers that the face-to-face conversations are the ones that allow us to innovate, are the ones that allow us to actually connect, that allow us to actually discover solutions to problems that we can't really get to serendipitously when we need to schedule Zoom calls. And then the last is UX strategy and product vision. Towards what end are we actually working? Where do we want to get to? What does great look like? So what is this end-to-end journey experience? What is the narrative? And this is, from my perspective, essential for having not only designers, but also product managers and engineers really feel empowered because they understand where we're looking to go. Coming back to our one merchant, one product narrative, this is really the world that I want us to think about. So one merchant, we have multiple products that are being experienced through this one interface. So what is the user experience journey? What is that really like? How are we coordinating the marketing touch points for all these different countries? What brand are we really building? And then we invest in our customer care agents. We really believe they are an important part of delivering the SumUp quality of experience. So how do we empower them to really deliver an experience that's cohesive? So we're on the journey to look at what are the brand characteristics. We've been reviewing them to see if we can simplify them and really have a strong message that we can craft into the UX strategy. We have experience principles that we're working on. And as a third leg, we want to be looking at what actually are service principles. One important part, I'm super excited about this with Erica Gibson joining SumUp as the Global Head of User Research, is we're now starting the journey of really understanding our merchants. And we want to build it around something we call continuous knowledge building, which is philosophically a very different approach to user research than even what I've been able to do in other companies, where it's more generally project-based or question-based. So we have 3 pillars that we want to be establishing for this continuous knowledge building. One is around data. It's the first pillar. We have data, of course, everywhere, and we talk about big data, which is all the data that we generate through the use of the product, through our customer care agents, through just demographics, through the business. But then we also have thick data, which comes much more through the qualitative research that the user research community is going to be bringing to the conversation. So it's a really important part that we leverage all the data that we have inside of a company to understand our merchants and to create hypotheses. The second pillar for us is meaning, because of course the data in itself doesn't really fully tell us what is going on. We, both Erica and I are firm believers in the rigor that we need to put into understanding the data and creating insights and creating meaning out of them. The meaning, however, is also only one thing. How do we then take what we've learned? How do we take our understanding and really create impact? And what are the practices around that? I see the move from meaning to impact is where a lot of companies stop short because the translation it either gets lost in translation or there is no translation that's happening. So our vision is to really, with these three pillars, create this virtuous circle of continuous knowledge building, where every person, every SumUpper in the company starts to have a knowledge of our merchants. So somebody in Sofia really can understand merchants in Sao Paulo or in the northeastern part of Brazil, as well as in the UK. And somebody in Brazil also understands what it means, what our merchants, what needs are in the UK. So we really built this almost like my metaphor is a bit like clay. It's a continuous additional knowledge building. It's not like one report, one moment in time. And our belief is that in a year and a half, when we have a knowledge base that we can leverage, and we've been talking about our merchants, we're building this narrative, that the velocity at which we can create impact will increase, because we're all going to be working off a shared knowledge, and we'll be able to reference that in solving our problems and building products. Super ambitious. We are at the beginning of the journey, but I'm very excited that this will give us a very different foundation from which to both create stories, but really solve our merchants' needs. When I started at SumUp a month in, I was asked by one of the tribes to talk about design and what we want to accomplish. And we put together this provocation to tell the story, to start to open up everybody's mind to what could be the experience of SumUp to our merchants. It was very provocative. It was a lot of hand waving on my part, but the story behind it was really engaged everybody. And I did the same presentation in a couple of different offices, and everybody would come up to me afterwards and say, okay, now I really understand where we're trying to go. I really understand what our goal is, what our vision is. And the particular tribe that I created this for did their Q1 planning as a follow-on to this, and immediately changed their strategy and started to focus on, well, how would we actually get there? What's the delta to be able to achieve a vision? So what's really exciting for me is both the impact, that the reinforcement of how important this story is, but also what I'm excited about is we're actually on this journey where this seemed provocative. It's really not that provocative. This is really where we're going. One of the foundations for a UX strategy is for us to look at our brand. I really believe that the digital experiences that we create are the strongest manifestation for a brand, because it's dynamic, it can be emotional. And then we bring that together with our merchant knowledge. So we've been working on taking our brand characteristics and who we want to be as a company and what we want to stand for, and deriving UX principles from that. And we're going to be rolling that out this quarter. Initial feedback, even from product and engineers, has been super supportive and engaged. So we think we are able to provide principles that teams can use to really drive decision-making for implementation for the experience. We, of course, have a design system. It is we're in the process of significantly upgrading it from a first version that was very web-based to actually a design system that really works also on mobile, and that can take us to the future. Next year, we're going to make accessibility one of our themes, and we really want to take accessibility topics and bring them into the design system. We've already started to do that by our look at typography and colors. So we have enough contrast. We're getting away from light gray on light gray and really small type in light gray, and really creating a design system that really works for our merchants who are going to be using our product in bright sunlight, in dynamic environments, on phones that are going to be quite different quality, and we really start to be truthful to our care of our small merchants and serving their needs. So UX strategy and product vision, really believe in that. We are working on it. I'm happy to share it when we have created it as a follow-up, if there's interest. But it's the three principles on how to get there. I really believe we need to empower teams with knowledge about our customers, and this is really our mission from a user research perspective. I believe in the power of story and inspiring and bringing people together, and I believe autonomous teams will gravitate towards saying, yes, we want to make that happen, and we'll go that extra mile to make it happen, which is why number 3 is also important. we need to bring everybody on the journey. And I want engineers to be as passionate about what we want to create as the designers are, and to be really engaged in the problem solving and in the solution to this. So in summary, I use these three as a foundation for how I'm scaling design at SumUp. And with design, again, I mean brand design, product design, and user research. So it's very much looking at the organization, really making that harmonious, really making that adapt. But then as a counterpoint to the autonomy that we are setting up, what are the practices? How do I bring a really super committed community together so that we jointly stay focused on our one merchant and our one product experience? And then how do we inspire the whole organization with this? And this is really where the product vision comes into play, but also the tools that really enable these autonomous teams to stay connected, to create this cohesiveness, and that the product that we'll be able to download hopefully in a year will be significantly more powerful and not reflect our organization, but really serve our merchants' needs. So it's an exciting journey. We're in the middle of it. But I hope that what I was able to share with you is also useful for you in your organizations. I think these are fundamental tools and ways to think, but of course they all work a little bit differently in each organization, and you need to figure out what makes your organization unique and how do you adapt them to this, to take them on this journey. So thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to some of you during the conference. Thanks.